Okay, as soon as she's seated, we'll start. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. This is a very special meeting of our Subcommittee on International Human Rights because this is the first time since the subcommittee was formed that we are going to be honoring and giving recognition to human rights defenders around the world. As you know, our committee has unanimously selected 3 individuals for whom we want to give this honor and this recognition today. And 2 of those individuals are with us in person today. Marguerite Barankitse, who's done work in Burundi and has come from Rwanda to see us. Teresita Quintos Delis, or Gang, who has come from the Philippines and is here with us today. And we are also honored to have Sarah Hossain, who is coming to us from video conference from Bangladesh. And today is extremely special. I also think that it is very fitting that we are doing an honor to human rights defenders who are fighting for freedom and democracy and peace around the world on the 75th anniversary of D-Day, which we celebrated just earlier today at the War Memorial. And this is, I think, fitting because we know that those people who sacrifice, sometimes for complete strangers, people who risk their lives and in some cases give their lives because they want to create a more peaceful and more just and more fair world for their children, for people sometimes in other parts of the world and sometimes in their own communities. Those are people who very often are unsung. They're people who are very often not recognized for their work. And today we have 2 purposes. One is to recognize these 3 courageous, strong, brave women who have done so much to help the lives of others. But secondly, it is very important today that we are able to give voice for those women to talk about the very things that they have been fighting for, in some cases, for decades. And this is your chance, your opportunity to be able to use this venue, the Parliament of Canada, to be able to give voice to the very human rights that you have spent your lives trying to make sure that fellow citizens are able to enjoy. So we will begin with our video conference. We will begin with Ms. Sarah Hossain. I will give each about 10 minutes, and I'm very apologetic. I think we could stay here for hours to listen to you, but unfortunately, we are limited in our time. So Sarah Hossain is from Bangladesh. She practices constitutional, public interest, and family law at the Supreme Court of Bangladesh. She currently serves pro bono as the Honorary Executive Director of the Bangladesh Legal Aid and Services Trust, or BLAST, and is a partner at the law firm of Dr. Kamal Hossain and Associates. Ms. Hossain served as a member of the Board of Trustees of the United Nations Voluntary Fund for Victims of Torture from 2017 to 2018, and as a commissioner of the International Commission of Jurists. She is on the advisory committee of the Women's Initiative for Gender Justice and is a member of the Human Rights Committee of the International Law Association and the advisory committee of Women's International Coalition on Gender Justice. Ms. Hossain was a recipient of the 2016 International Women of Courage Award, awarded by the United States Secretary of State, and today she is being recognized by the Subcommittee on International Human Rights for her work as a human rights defender. Go ahead, Ms. Hossain.
Good morning. Thank you so very much to all the members of the subcommittee for their recognition of our work at BLAST. We're all really honored by this, and I want to thank you very much. I'm just one of 2,500 or more lawyers practicing across the country in Bangladesh who are part of the pro bono network at BLAST. Together with our staff lawyers and paralegals, we provide advice, legal representation, alternative dispute resolution, and strategic litigation, primarily focused on ensuring access to justice for the poor and marginalized groups. We also undertake research and advocacy to identify and challenge discriminatory laws and practices, and to try and ensure greater responsiveness within our justice system for those who are most in need. We work often in alliance with other rights organizations, particularly working on access to justice for workers, for women and children who are survivors of violence, and for those who face discrimination due to ethnicity, religion, belief, gender, identity, or disability, amongst others. In many cases, we work alongside the government, complementing the government's legal aid program providing advice to indigent prisoners, or supporting initiatives such as activating village courts, which deal with petty claims. These kinds of initiatives really deal with diversion of cases away from our very clogged up courts and our justice system. But in addition, our frontline services, which are provided by paralegals in person over telephone hotlines using mobile apps or through our mobile legal clinics, will have a different function as well, a more important one than just diversion, which is informing people about their rights and, even more importantly, the possibility of remedy and how and where to secure it. We provide these services right across the country to Bangladeshis in villages and in our cities, and also now to Rohingya women and children, and to the broader community in the camps in Cox's Bazar who have fled atrocities in Myanmar. In our 25 years of service, I think, as you mentioned, it's very important. We're speaking today on the anniversary of D-Day. For us in Bangladesh, a more recent anniversary is of course, our own independence war in 1971, and that memory and the memory of many of those who were involved with setting up our organization, their own experience of the sacrifice and the violations that they suffered there has really been what's animated our work since as well. And in the 25 years that we've been working, and the almost 50 years now that Bangladesh has been alive as a nation, we have won many significant victories and we have moved forward. If we just look at our own work at BLAST, we've seen that through ensuring timely advice and timely legal intervention, we've made real changes in people's lives. So, for example, for women, we've won custody disputes, we've stopped child marriages, we've ensured maintenance payments which allow women to carry on with their lives. We've won fights for workers, winning compensation after workplace deaths and injuries, getting arrears of wages. Through strategic litigation, we've also won victories, striking down the mandatory death penalty, holding extrajudicial penalties, mostly on women, by informal justice bodies to constitute violations of the right to gender equality, prohibiting beating of children in schools, imposing restrictions on police abuse of powers in cases of arrest without warrant. We have challenges ongoing. We're supporting a visually impaired lawyer, for example, now to challenge through constitutional petitions rules that still prohibit, today in 2019, disabled people from joining the judiciary or the civil service. We're still fighting 6 years after the event for the workers and the families of those who died in the Rana Plaza building collapse disaster to win compensation. But beyond these individual cases, we find that there are many challenges, more structural challenges that are still before us. When we started out 25 years ago, the world was a much more hopeful place. Many of you might remember at the Vienna Conference on Human Rights, many of us activists and human rights defenders made that call that women's rights are human rights. In today's world, that seems more relevant than ever. But at the same time, when we are seeing populists and autocrats all around the world, not only in our part of it, seeking to curtail rights and suppress or silence voices of difference and dissent, and we're also seeing extremists threatening the world with messages of hate and intolerance, seeking to divide people based on religion and race, it seems even more important for us as rights defenders to speak up for the rights of all, to speak up on the message of universality. And I think for us, from our perspective, we feel it's critical to defend and to fight for independent institutions, to secure people's right to vote, to an independent judiciary, to a free press, to resist politicization and capture of law enforcing agencies, and abuse of repressive laws to police dissent. Some of the challenges that we're facing now, in addition to all of the achievements and victories, is as we see the structures that we have relied on, and that really our premise has been to strengthen these structures, as we see that these are being threatened and facing fundamental attacks on their integrity. We see now that many victims of violations are the kinds of violations we hadn't imagined 25 years ago, of disappearances, of extrajudicial executions, simply aren't even able to approach organizations that would provide them with remedies, to articulate the needs that they have or that the claims that they are required to make. The fear is too high, the terror is too much, and they can't confront it, and we can't stand by them. So at this time, being able to speak up, being able to articulate claims for justice, finding the avenues and pathways to be able to make demands, and confronting repressive laws that are being made in the name of protection of people, in the name of protection of our rights, is, I think, the challenge that we have to confront. When I last had the privilege to speak before your committee a few months ago, I spoke about a couple of individual cases, about Kalpana Chakma, who disappeared in 1996, more than 23 years ago. In a few weeks, we'll be going to court again to ask again for investigation of her case, of the allegations made about her disappearance. We still have no answers. Last year, I spoke to you about a school teacher who had been arrested and held in detention for several weeks simply because she spoke up to ensure that school children, protesters who were demanding the right to be able to go safely to school without being mown down on the roads by speeding trucks and buses that nobody holds accountable for road safety violations. That woman was in prison last year. She's out now, but in the few months since I've spoken to you last, I've heard that she's now going to be actually taken. She's being charged with actually committing an offence under the Information Communications Technology Act. So these kinds of challenges remain, these fundamentally repressive laws being used not against people who are violating laws, but against people who are trying to speak up to ensure justice for others, people who have been at the forefront as defenders of rights, defenders of women, defenders of men, trying to make our country a safer and better place. So I just want to close by saying that, again, thank you very much to all of you for recognizing our work. Thank you particularly for recognizing our day-to-day work. And the stuff that is often unsung, as you said, ensuring that you can stand by people so they can make sure that their daily lives can be continued. But we want to thank you also for giving us the chance to speak about the things that we often are not able to speak about any longer. So thank you again, and we hope that you will stay with us as we go forward with our work.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hossain. And on behalf of all of the committee, we do congratulate you on being selected unanimously by this committee in recognition for the work that you are doing and continue to do. Thank you very much. We now will move on to Ms. Marguerite Baran-Kitze en 1993.
So in the midst of the Burundian civil war in 1993, Ms. Baran-Kitze established Maison Shalom, a shelter that has since provided access to healthcare, education and culture to over 20,000 orphaned children. Maison Shalom has grown into a large network of schools, hospitals and healthcare services across the country. And in 2015, Ms. Baran-Kitze fled to Rwanda after a political crisis erupted and Maison Shalom was closed by government order. In 2017, she opened Oasis of Peace in Kigali, and the centre has since assisted the community of almost 70,000 Burundian refugees in Rwanda. The centre offers psychosocial support to victims of torture and rape, and implements activities of sustainable development in areas such as health, education, vocational training, culture and income generation. Thank you very much for being here, Ms. Baran-Kitze. And please go ahead and make your presentation. Honourable parliamentarians and Madam Chairperson, I'd like to begin by expressing my tremendous gratitude for having granted me this opportunity to show you just what has happened to my homeland of Burundi, what happens in the shadows, what people are not aware of. My homeland, Burundi, has been stricken by inter-ethnic or cross-ethnical massacres. One could even categorize it as genocide. We fought tooth and nail to lift this veil. And the massacre in October on the 24th of October 1993, I stood up with my brothers and sisters against hate in an effort to build a generation of children from the Great Lakes region which was a region stricken by poverty. And I had dared to hope that this new generation would help to put an end to this vicious cycle of violence. Alas, after 23 years of fighting to build this new generation, I was convicted as a criminal, at the top of a list as a criminal with an international red arrest warrant over my head. Everything that we built, the big hospital, was closed down. The 10,000 or 1,000 households that lived in the cooperative that we built were once again plunged into poverty. Children suffering from malnutrition, and even the bank that I had created, co-funded, had to close its doors, and people were dying of hunger. Despite the natural resources in Burundi. And Burundi became an open-air prison, if you will. 500,000 refugees across Tanzania. And I'd like to touch on the topic of Tanzania right now and tell you, honourable parliamentarians, that Tanzania is attempting to deport my brothers and sisters and remove them at the border. When they arrive at the border, they are killed and they remain nameless, and others are thrown into prison. And the refugee camps in Tanzania, they are often threatened, they're killed, they try to escape, and Tanzania does not attempt to protect them. How can you express the distress of a mother when she cries out and says that Canada needs to do all it can to come to their assistance when these refugees die with no one paying any heed to what they endure? And there are over 1,500 child soldiers to whom we gave back their lives, and militias, young people from the party in power that go about wreaking havoc and terror and kill with complete indifference. Many young girls are sold. Over 230 young girls are trafficked to the Gulf countries, and no one speaks up. No one dares speak out. Young boys are tortured, castrated, and over 9,000 young people have been put behind bars for no good reason. And the Attorney General of Burundi just signed an order, an expropriation order in the form of a letter, that all those the 32 who were unjustly accused, they are in this letter. Their children, their wives, their spouses find themselves in the streets, homeless. Their homes have been taken away from them. And they can't even flee the country because they cannot get the travel documents to leave the country because they have, of course, their parents' last names. This is a disastrous humanitarian situation we're dealing with. The 500,000 Burundians in exile, of which 60% of the children are suffering from malnutrition. The UN High Commission on Human Rights has called for funding to come to their assistance and has only achieved 1% of its targeted funding. We have a destiny of poverty, and yet I turned my back on that destiny, and I refuse to allow the status quo to take hold. The President of the Republic, Mr. Pierre Nkurunziza, has indeed essentially become a fascist. It's a fascist regime. Even the international NGOs have been forced to sign an ethnic quota order. And those that refuse or cannot sign have to leave the country. So we are calling on you, parliamentarians of Canada, to help us to bring justice to bear so that these children can grow up just like your children do. They are your children at the end of the day, and that the Burundian people reclaim their dignity. The fact is that we have to shelter 2,000 young people who've had to drop out of university, and if they're bereft of hope, they'll take up arms, and they may indeed be killed. And these young kids need to go back to school. These 700 or 7,000 children in the Ugandan refugee camps don't even go to school in the 21st century. What's going to become of all these children? You'll see them become child soldiers, undoubtedly, and it'll be too late for them. General Dallaire, in fact, cried out for help out of sheer desperation, but no one comes to their assistance. And I stand here as a mother crying out to you, asking for something to be done before it's too late and before a genocide, in fact, breaks out in Burundi. I'd like to thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'd like to thank you, honourable parliamentarians. Once again, please, I'm tremendously grateful for the opportunity, for the honour of appearing before you today and to pay tribute to all these victims. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your very moving remarks and for your strength of courage. And on the behalf of the committee, we'd like to, in fact, to commend you on your work.
Our third honoree today, and we have with us again Teresita Ging Quintos Delis. Ms. Quintos Delis is an advocate for women's empowerment and peace building in the Philippines. She is currently chairperson of the International Center for Innovation, Transformation, and Excellence in Governance, InsightGov, a policy research and advocacy center in the Philippines that provides support to democratic movements and spearheading democratic reform coalitions and initiatives. Ms. Quintos Delis also serves as the permanent representative of the Philippines to the advisory board of the ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliation. She previously acted as presidential advisor on the peace process. She began this work in 2003 and helped to achieve the 2014 Comprehensive Peace Agreement with the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, ending a civil war that had affected the province of Mindanao for decades. She has been praised for empowering grassroots communities and women's groups in particular to become part of the peace process. She was also involved in having the Philippines become the first country in Asia Pacific to start and enforce a national action plan on women, peace, and security. Well, welcome to the committee, Ms. Quintos Delis, and we look forward to your intervention.
Thank you. To the Honorable Chair and the members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me again to appear before you. Receiving an award or recognition for one's work is undoubtedly an occasion for great satisfaction and joy. But this time it is also with a sobering thought that this recognition and celebration is necessary today because the situation of human rights in my country has become so dire. Championing human rights is really just common sense and regular work, a normal part of one's life, except when human rights are threatened and violated every day, and especially when the threat emanates from the highest level of government. Then, to uphold and defend human rights becomes a dangerous act, and to persist in its defense becomes extraordinary and heroic. This is how it is in the Philippines today. It is not the way it is supposed to be. And I would give anything, everything, not to have to be here, because it would mean that it's all right in my homeland, and working on human rights needs no special acknowledgement. But we all know that that is not the case, and it is with profound gratitude that I take my place in the panel before you today. Thank you for providing a safe space for us to be able to speak about the crisis of human rights in our respective countries. Thank you for giving us a platform to remind the world that in the darkness that envelopes our home countries today, there are people who continue to struggle and who refuse to surrender to the dark night. I know that today's honor speaks less to me and my achievements and more to the importance of doing this work today. Even more, I recognize that I am here not just for myself, but for the many more who continue to fight, especially the women who have been especially targeted for persecution and intimidation, especially the women in the communities which have encountered and continue to endure the state's most brutal violence. As I told you last April, human rights has not really been the focus of my work over the past several decades. Since 1987, following the downfall of Marcos, my major effort has focused on the field of conflict resolution and peace building, pursuing the belief that civilians and ordinary unarmed citizens are major stakeholders, if not the primary claimants in any peace process, that peace talks are too important to be left just to the combatants to work out, and that peace work is constant and collective work. We built the Philippine Peace Movement that, among other things, established and upheld peace zones which community residents declared as off limits to any display of weapons, that unilaterally declared people ceasefires to silence the guns marking special occasions, that pushed the government to set up a full-time peace office under the Office of the President and to adopt a multi-track peace policy to end the many fronts of internal armed conflict left behind by the Marcos dictatorship. In 2010, I crossed over from civil society to public service for the second time, to serve in the Aquino cabinet as overseer of this office. Under my watch in March 2014, the Comprehensive Agreement on the Bangsamoro, or CAB, was signed. 3 women signed the CAB on the part of government, including the government's chief negotiator, a first in the world. Despite stalled implementation and presidential waffling in the first years of the Duterte presidency, the CAB has held, putting in place the new and enhanced Bangsamoro Autonomous Region with a transitional regional government now led by the MILF. On the other hand, my work with the women's movement started earlier in 1981 when I co-founded Pilipina with a handful of NGO women, arguably the first women's organization in the Philippines, which explicitly tagged itself as feminist. At this time, Imelda Marcos was parading her brand of leadership on the global stage, shaping the national women's machinery into her image, while the conjugal dictatorship ran a well-oiled machinery of murder and plunder, which bloodied the countryside and bled the national coffers dry. There came to be a blossoming of women's organizations, and in 1985, we were confident and consolidated enough to bring an alternative NGO report to the Nairobi World Women's Conference. Women would join the fight against Marcos on all fronts, and so it was that the images of our 1986 EDSA People Power Revolution would show military tanks stopped in their tracks by outstretched hands holding rosaries and flowers. The intervening years after EDSA saw the women's movement building on its gains and relentlessly pushing to overcome and stretch the limits of women's participation in the public and private spheres, incrementally building a legal architecture, which today includes laws against sexual harassment, violence against women and children, rape, including in marriage, legislation upholding the rights of women in agriculture and the informal sector, a long-fought, hard-won reproductive health law, an omnibus Magna Carta of Women, which embeds CEDAW in Philippine domestic law, providing law, even in the just-ended last Congress, through the hard work of the battered opposition led by Senator Risa Hontiveros, the Safe Streets and Public Spaces Law was passed. This law, notably, the law was not signed by the President. Not being vetoed, it simply lapsed into law. Always there was more work to be done in homes, workplaces, and public spaces to make sure that laws became reality, that women overcome barriers of culture and poverty, and to continuously assert that the glass ceilings being broken by Filipino women should not blind us to the multiple loads and burdens and sometimes impossible pain that our sisters who barely survive in the cellar continue to suffer. The work was far from done, but Filipino women, being ranked at the top of Asia's Gender Equality Index and the only Asian country in the top 10 global ranking, we felt assured that we were on the right track, that gains would not be reversed. It could only get better. Did the women's movement get complacent? Possibly, probably. Our base organizing work no longer inflamed the fire in the belly. Gender equality efforts turned more technical and maybe even bureaucratic, less feminist and fierce. Certainly, we were not ready for the way our world has turned upside down since Duterte took office in July 2016. We never imagined we would ever have to face attacks against women of the sort, gravity, frequency, flagrancy, and willfulness that is now almost our daily fare. No woman has been spared, and no man, as everyone's mother, daughter, sister, aunt, and grandmother have been made more vulnerable to violence, both physical and psychological. No one has been spared. Everyone has been urged to succumb to their basest instincts, as senior officials laugh, take pictures, and rationalize presidential misbehavior, and large portions of the audience laugh and call the president authentic. Finally, a president who is one of them. This is a Philippines we have never known and never imagined it could be. The fight has to be fought every day and at every front and level to make sure that this does not become our permanent reality. We are caught off balance by the cruelty and viciousness, indeed by the utter shamelessness of Duterte's attacks on women. But as I pointed out last time, there is in fact method in his madness. He is not simply unhinged. His are calculated attacks that aim to silence dissent by making an example of the women he has publicly vilified, slut-shamed, and punished, in order to promote a culture of impunity that has resulted in the narrowing of political, social, and economic discourse in the country. Let us not forget the growing list of women leaders who have dared to cross his line and have suffered its consequences. I will not name them here now because of the time constraint, but only mention Senator Laila De Lima, who today marks her 833rd day in solitary detention without any shadow of a forthcoming conviction, as her court trials are going nowhere. The message is clear and chilling. If this can be done to powerful and prominent women, then with greater ease can it be done to others. In April, I also spoke about the two most pressing human rights crises that are burning in the Philippines today. I regret to inform this subcommittee that the crises continue to rage with no end in sight. The killings continue in the bloody war on drugs, which has widowed countless women and orphaned countless children, becoming a new underclass of the urban poor. With the Philippine Supreme Court establishing that more than 20,000 have already been killed by 2017, the number of victims already far exceed the 3,257 reportedly killed under Marcos martial law. In the face of growing criticism of its bloody anti-drug war by the church and other sectors, Duterte pronounced during his State of the Nation address in July last year that his war on drugs will continue. In his words, the war against illegal drugs will not be sidelined. Instead, it will be as relentless, as chilling, if you will, as the day it began. It is a war against the poor, now spreading to other urbanized areas outside of Manila. Its costs will haunt us for generations. In Marawi, the tent city set up during the siege, now mostly dusty, torn, and still waterless, is still standing as home to displaced residents who have had to mark their second Ramadan since the siege, still not knowing when they will be allowed to return to their homes in the most affected areas in the center of the city, still without a shadow of a workable rehabilitation plan that they can look forward to and plan for. Even worse, before the end of April, after my first appearance here, Duterte expressed his inclination to pass on the costs of the rehabilitation of the city he had ordered carpet-bombed to the private sector. Anyway, he said, the people there have a lot of money. This despite the huge amount his administration has received from the international community precisely for the rebuilding of Marawi. Even today, no independent inquiry has been conducted on the true state of Marawi. Troubling reports remain unverified. The distressing implication being, Whatever is being reported now is just the tip of the iceberg of an escalating human rights and humanitarian crisis. Of such crises are new and more vicious wars born. We continue to fight the alarming status quo, but the fight has just gotten harder. The results of the recent elections have now all but solidified Duterte's control over all three branches of government, with the opposition failing to win any seat in the Senate, leaving the minority in the Senate even more minuscule and vulnerable. Whether this was actually a blanket public endorsement of Duterte and his resolutions, there were certainly enough anomalies in the conduct of the elections that the Commission on Elections is being asked to account. What is certain is the recent electoral results will only further embolden Duterte and his forces. And so even as our work continues all the same, we also have to brace for harder storms ahead. We cannot operate on the assumption that democracies will course correct on their own. Whether in the Philippines or elsewhere, we cannot assume that the storm will simply pass, that a country will eventually see sense and move towards justice and progress, that voters will see evidence and elect better leaders, leaders who won't attack women, leave a city ruined and promptly shun responsibility, and kill thousands in a futile and inutile policy. Our recent elections alone prove that. For instance, the chief implementer of the brutal war on drugs, despite the thousands killed, is now a senator. The violence of misogyny, the brutality of the war on drugs, the neglect of Marawi, these aberrations have existed before. And despite our best efforts, will likely exist for some time more. These are crimes for which there must someday come a full accounting. But at the same time, it is also becoming clear that more than the violence, the brutality, and the neglect, for the rest of the world, the crime of our times is silence. We are not all silent in the Philippines. A growing number are pushing back and pushing back harder. There are many stories to tell, but we don't have time for that. Let me just mention my women's organization, Every Woman. We are fighting, but too few are listening, and the government is taking every effort to obscure reality and stifle dissent. And so again, we have to insist, this cannot be just a domestic concern. When local human rights defenders are themselves attacked and persecuted, then the role of the international community of human rights defenders becomes even more important. It becomes essential. So again, I ask on behalf of all of those who are fighting at home, for the world community to stand with us. Let not Duterte and his minions think that there will be no reckoning for those who attack their own people for the sake of power. As the Canadian government launches the Equality Fund Canada, may I also ask for the subcommittee to consider how the fund may ensure that support be given to the women and women's organizations, those who are pushing back in the pushback, in the words of the fund. Again, thank you to the subcommittee. It is a great honor to be considered part of this important community. Good afternoon.
I want to thank you as well, Ms. Quintas Delis, for your courage, for your voice. And one of the things that this committee is trying to ensure is that there is not going to be silence when these things happen. And I think all of your testimony is an indicator that around the world, we are seeing backsliding and regression when it comes to human rights and democracy. And we absolutely thank you and applaud you, all three of you, for the incredible effort that you are doing in your part of the world to try to counter that regression and to make sure that everyone can live in dignity and in peace. So thank you so much for being here. And I would now like the entire committee to move to the podium for the remainder of the meeting. The two vice chairs and myself and our two honorees who are here present. I would also like Ms. Hossein to know that you will be on the screen behind us, so we will be able to get you in the photos and also in the video as we present the certificates. We will now move to the podium. We'll do a photo afterwards as well. So we will now move to the podium for the remainder of the meeting. Thank you. With a little bit of their bio, and then the two of you. If it goes this way, it's that camera there. We could do that. We could do that. We could do that. Well, it's up to you. I think no. You know what? I think we'll present like they're going to be here, and then the two of you can do some closing remarks on behalf of.
Oh, I'm not. We're pressed for time.
Okay,
as it
come.
is. I said mine at the meal,
Okay.
so I.
Okay.
It's like
Okay. So we will begin. I know that she's not here present, but by video conference with Ms. Sarah Hussein. On behalf of the Subcommittee on International Human Rights, we would like to present this certificate to you, Sarah Hussein, who has worked tirelessly with Bangladesh Legal Aid Services to make the Bangladeshi legal system accessible to marginalized groups and more responsive to their needs. Your work as a member of the Board of Trustees of the United Nations Voluntary Fund for Victims of Torture and as a commissioner of the International Commission of Jurists has touched the lives of many people. And so with the committee members, we present you with this special certificate honoring the work that you've done. This is the first annual certificate that we are presenting by the Subcommittee on International Human Rights of the Canadian Parliament. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Et la deuxième, Marguerite.
The second award winner, Marguerite Barankansitse, as the founder of the Maison Shalom International, you've helped over 20,000 orphan children, an entire generation, to get healthcare, education, and cultural services. Your tireless efforts have continued in Rwanda with the community centre Oasis of Peace, which has enabled tens of thousands of Burundian refugees in the country to obtain healthcare services, including psychosocial services for those who've faced traumatic events, and also to take training programs for professional development. Congratulations, Madame Barankitse.
Come over here. Sorry. Okay. And last but not least, Teresita Quintos Delis. As chairperson of the International Center on Innovation, Transformation, and Excellence in Governance, your organization has supported policy research and advocacy in the Philippines in support of democratic reform initiatives. Your ardent support of peace helped facilitate the 2014 peace agreement to the decades-long conflict in Mindanao Province, Philippines. Thank you very much for all of you for appearing before the subcommittee on its inaugural recognition of international human rights champions. Thank you, Ms. Quintos Delis. Congratulations. Congratulations. We'll come over here as well. So, all right, here. So, we will. So, on behalf of the committee, this is the first time we are able to honor these champions of international human rights, the human rights defenders. And I would like the vice chairs, if they wish, to come up and say a few words of congratulations to our honorees. David, Vice Chair.
okay. I'll be really quick. I know we're pressed for time. I'm just going to quote Teresita. Thank you for fueling this fire in our bellies.
David.
Sarah Hussein, Marguerite Barankitse, and Therese Quintos Delis. Let me express our sincerest gratitude for your bravery, courage, and work. On a daily basis, you risk your reputation, your own safety, and that of your families. You continue to work in an ever-increasingly dangerous situation. We pray that your energies will be renewed, knowing you have new friends here in the Parliamentary Committee. Chair, if you'd also allow me, I'd like to say a sincere thank you to Anita Vandenbeld, Cheryl Hardcastle, David Anderson, Peter Fragiskatis, and Ikra Khalid. 7 years ago, and Marwan Tabera. So, 7 years ago, we began the process of trying to champion this. Certainly, there was no objection in the last Parliament, but because human rights is what it is, there were so many issues that we never got to it. And I just want to say thank you to my colleagues all around the room for making this possible. It's one of the warmest and rewarding days of my career. I also like to say to our clerk and research staff, who had no model to follow, but made this a special and dignified event, one that's worthy of the sacrifice of the honorees and the amount of people that they save on a regular basis. Finally, whether it's in Bangladesh, Burundi, the Philippines, any other place where human rights are violated and are allowed to continue, let the human rights defenders of the globe know that they have friends here in this committee, and let the perpetrators know that this committee will also expose their deeds to the best of our abilities. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you. I would invite the members to congratulate the honorees, and this concludes our meeting. Thank you. And we'll do a photo, official photo. Sarah is still on the screen. Okay. Sarah, we can still see you.
That's right. And you're going to be in the photo.
Yeah, we're going to try to get you in the photo, Sarah.